And good morning. Welcome into the Cam Rogers Show. I am Cam Rogers. It is Monday, May 21st, 2018. How we doing, ladies and gentlemen? I am back in studio here in Dallas. Great experience there at the AT&T Byron Nelson a week ago. Hope you guys enjoyed the shows remotely. We got a fun hour on tap for you guys. Let's take a look at the rundown here. And we have the latest NFL headlines, a lot of juicy stories to get through here, including, as you see at the top of the show description on the broadcast, Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski skipping OTAs, Johnny Manziel going to play in the CFL. I'll spend some time on that. Terrence Williams arrested, Reuben Foster with a new court date. Oh yeah, and there's that Colin Kaepernick collusion case. Somebody new has recently gotten deposed there, so I'll get to that later in the program. Harris Rubenstein will join me, as you see, with the latest LeBron James rumors. A lot of juiciness in that respect as well. I got a final word here about the Vegas Golden Knights and just an improbable run that they have had so far in the Stanley Cup playoffs. I'll get to that later. And of course, top 10 NFL defenses of 2018, because I did the offenses back on Friday morning. You're watching the Cam Rogers Show presented by AutoList. Head on to Autolist.com. Get that car shopping done in a flash. Really easy website to navigate, and you can skip the car dealership and all that jazz. Go to Autolist.com and get it done. All right, folks, let's get through the latest headlines here this morning. We'll start things off with Johnny Manziel headed to the CFL. It is official. He signed a deal with the Hamilton Tiger Cats. And comeback season SZN continues here. So Manziel announced over the weekend he did sign the deal. And this is the same team that offered him a 2-year contract back in January. Also the team that owned his rights as well. And the Tiger Cats open their training camp just this coming weekend. Their preseason opener is on June 1st. So things are moving very fast here. In fact, training camp started yesterday to be exact. So things are already rolling here. And Manziel, of course, was released by the Browns in March 2016. Did not play any organized football in 2017. So we all know the Good Morning America exclusive interview that he gave, where he basically revealed that he was dealing with some really difficult stuff, including being diagnosed with bipolar disorder. It's been a big time climb out of a hole, if you will, for Johnny Manziel. And he's a guy who looked pretty darn good in the spring league, might I add. Certainly had his fair share of mistakes in those games, just a couple of games, so a small sample size, and didn't play the entire games throughout the process there. So something to keep in mind there. But still, here's why I am so impressed with Johnny Manziel. He's playing the long game, guys. He's not playing the short game. You know what I mean? Play the long game, and playing this long game, I guess I could say, in any respect, really is usually the most effective way to do things. We are all about instant gratification here in America, and really just in regular human kind of instance. You know, remember that experiment that you probably learned in psychology class about the marshmallows and the kids who waited and did not eat the marshmallows instantly ended up being more successful in life? That's kind of where I'm going at here, because Johnny Manziel is not trying to rush into things playing in the National Football League. We see this so many times where players are trying to make a comeback, and they feel that because they have played in the NFL before, that they should just be anointed as an NFL player yet again. Johnny Manziel understands that this is going to be a step-by-step process here. And it's evident because, well, he signed a 2-year deal with the Hamilton Tiger Cats. So he has a 2-year commitment to the CFL team. Now, whether or not it lasts that long, we will see. But the point is, Johnny Manziel is taking his time with this process here, and I think that's the most important thing. He understands that he battled his fair share of adversity with the domestic violence allegations and the drugs and the partying and the bad PR and the awful stint with the Cleveland Browns. He's trying to turn things around, and he understands he can't just go back into the NFL and be an effective quarterback. And I don't even know if he ever will be an effective quarterback in the National Football League. That is beside the point, though. The point is that it's refreshing to see Johnny Manziel go through the motions here, taking the necessary steps to perhaps complete the NFL comeback. And I want to hear from you guys. Hit me up in comments. will Johnny Manziel return to the National Football League? It's certainly up for debate. And in the small sample size that we did see him play in the NFL, it wasn't great, but we're talking about the Cleveland Browns here, the sad factory of football, it seems. So, you know, maybe it's not a fair shake. Maybe we need to see some more data there in terms of his games in the NFL. But I will say he looked pretty good in the spring league. We'll see if he can carry that momentum here into the CFL. There was some buzz that maybe Johnny would play in the XFL or maybe the Alliance of American Football. I'll talk about that later. There's a story regarding that. But the comeback rolls on here, and you got to give it to Johnny Football. And, you know, he knows that he can't just assume a role in the NFL. And for a player who's trying to make a comeback, you really can't ever assume that you're just going to waltz into the National Football League and actually make an impact yet again. And I think Johnny Manziel is being very mature about all of this. And, you know, he really started to grow on me when I saw that GMA interview there where he talked about, you know, battling through all the negative stuff in his life and his family and, you know, trying to get them to really support him yet again because, you know, he has done them wrong here and there and all of this stuff. And it's a really nice little comeback story here. Now, the comeback has not been completed yet. So we're not going to be trotting out LL Cool J just yet, but do let me know what you think about Johnny Manziel. Will you watch him in the CFL? Give me a heart for yes, a like for no, and I'll tell you what, my watching of the CFL is not very extensive, but I will watch the games that Johnny Manziel plays in. So maybe the CFL, from a PR standpoint there, is making a big-time move by getting Johnny Manziel. And, you know, it's actually certainly a credence to them because you had the AAF and the XFL perhaps looking into Manziel as well. So for the CFL to really reel in Johnny Manziel, certainly a big thing for that league in general from a monetary standpoint, revenue, all that stuff, fan excitement, all that good jazz there. So Johnny Manziel back in professional football. He's headed to the CFL. Let's continue along here with the latest headlines, and it's a bad one for Terrence Williams, wide receiver for the Cowboys. He was arrested over the weekend on suspicion of misdemeanor public intoxication on Saturday, to be exact, after a car registered to him was found crashed into a light pole. He was released by Frisco police shortly after the incident on $369 bond. I don't know how you find that amount. It's like weirdly exact, but anyway. The incident remains under investigation. Police responded to this crash at 4:45 a.m. Central Time. And Williams, as you see, is entering the second year of his 4-year, $17 million deal with the Cowboys. 2017 wasn't all that inspiring. 53 receptions, 568 yards. No touchdowns for T-Will. Now, he did release a statement on the matter, trying to provide some clarity into all of this. And the long statement is, quote, "The police officer who I have met in the past in the neighborhood saw me on the scooter and arrested me without performing any sobriety tests." And here's the quote that you see on your screen. "I have always been an upstanding citizen and handled the situation the best I know how." So the investigation continues to roll on there for Terrence Williams, and it sounds like, you know, just to him, some sort of innocent crash, and he was not under any sort of influence or anything like that. So we'll see what the investigation really pulls out here in terms of Terrence Williams, but he is certainly under a microscope, if you will, for, number one, this incident. Number two, a lot of pressure on him to perform in 2018, especially with the turnover at wide receiver. Dez is gone. Yeah, you got a couple of new guys in Hearns and Deontay Thompson, but you can't expect them to make immediate impacts as they try to learn a new offense. Terrence Williams has to emerge a little bit, at least a little more than 2017, where I read you guys the stat line, 53 receptions for under 600 yards. It's not very good. So Terrence Williams arrested over the weekend. We'll see how that pans out. All right, a little bit of a developing story here. Tom Brady skipping the start of organized team activities along with buddy Rob Gronkowski. And here we go again. So first of all, let me just say that OTAs are voluntary. So it's not the biggest deal in the world, but Brady usually does not skip out on OTAs. That's not his MO. And, of course, he skipped out on the voluntary workouts a couple months ago or a couple weeks ago, and now this. So what is the underlying message here? Because Gronk is not present and Brady is not present, is there some sort of tag teaming going on here where they are trying to spite head coach Bill Belichick? It's not the craziest theory in the world, folks. More and more, the Seth Wickersham article that describes the friction within the Patriots organization is growing and growing in credibility. Because what I believe is, one, for Rob Gronkowski, I think it's more of a contract situation, just trying to get the tweaks there, and that's why he's not present. So that's more of a typical reason. But two, for Tom Brady, is he trying to send some sort of message here to the sheriff in town, Bill Belichick, the head coach? You look at the Seth Wickersham article that came out a couple of months ago, and it described how Tom Brady did not feel appreciated, that he got too much grief from Bill Belichick and giving too much praise to the other players. And so in that vein, is Tom Brady here skipping OTAs to perhaps send some sort of message to Bill Belichick saying, hey, you got to change the way you operate this team, or else this just is not going to work out from a continuity and chemistry standpoint. So let me know in the comments what you guys think. Is there friction between Bill Belichick and Tom Brady? We got Z chiming in the comments section. Bill Belichick is leaving. Big time take there. Continue to hit me up in the comments because we will feature them here on the broadcast on the Cam Rogers Show. But I will say it's certainly some fodder for all of us to think about, right, with Tom Brady skipping these OTAs. Now, like I've said, they are voluntary. You got to watch out for the mandatory minicamp. If Tom Brady does not show up next month to the mandatory minicamp, which is, of course, required, that's what mandatory means, then he's actually subject to fines and other punishment, perhaps within the Patriots organization too. So if that happens, I'll be back here on these airwaves saying there is something very real going on within the Patriots organization, particularly between Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. Bill Belichick, the ultimate micromanager. Tom Brady, the Mr. Positivity and Kumbaya and all this stuff. All of a sudden, these personalities are starting to not mesh. And for so long they did because why? They were winning. Let's say they don't win at the beginning of the regular season. Things could spiral out of control even more. Not the craziest theory in the world, ladies and gentlemen. I know all you Patriots fans will come at me. I have a lot of Patriots fans friends. I'm from New England. I'm not a Patriots fan, but I am also not a Patriots hater. I'm telling you as is. There is something to Tom Brady skipping out on these OTAs. It's not just for fun. It's not because he's on vacation. He already did that. So there's something more to the puzzle than what is to meet the eye, at least at this juncture. So as we go throughout the OTAs, not expected to see Tom Brady. If we hit mandatory minicamp and he is not there, watch out. There's something going on within the Patriots. All right, let's continue along with the headlines here. J.J. Watt, what a story this is. So he has offered to pay for the victims' funerals of that Santa Fe school shooting, and there is a reason why J.J. Watt won last year's Walter Payton Man of the Year award. It's stuff like this. So really cool story here. So 9 students, 1 teacher were killed in this incident. 10 others were injured. Watt has offered to pay for the fees in regards to all these funerals here. And, of course, Watt made a lot of noise for his charitable endeavors last year for his Hurricane Harvey fundraising campaign that raised more than $37 million for the people affected there. So really good stuff there from J.J. Watt, who, by the way, is coming back from injury and all this stuff. So he battled so much adversity with trying to battle back from the injuries of last season and still being able to go through all these philanthropic endeavors. So good stuff there from J.J. Watt. All right, love to see that. All right, Vincent Jackson has called it a career, folks, after not playing a snap in 2017. He's wrapping it up at 35 years old. His agent confirmed Jackson is happily retired. The Chargers, of course, grabbed him in the second round of the 2005 draft. His final season, 2016, was cut due short to an ACL tear there, and perhaps his rehab and recovery has something to do with the ultimate decision to hang it up. Along the way, though, he had a really solid year or campaign or career, notching 3 Pro Bowl nods, 6,000-yard campaigns. Really fun to watch. he was a good fantasy football player as well. I'm sure you guys recognize him in that realm of things, but really a fantastic player throughout the years. 1,000-yard campaign after 1,000-yard campaign. Electric player, great in the red zone. He was a big target too. So Vincent Jackson a lot of times didn't have the luxury of great quarterback play, particularly with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but continued to really churn out some solid seasons there. So Vincent Jackson hanging it up, ladies and gentlemen. All right, so Tom Brady is skipping out on OTAs. So is this guy, Julio Jones, wide receiver of the Atlanta Falcons. So Odell Beckham Jr. is expected to be present, but apparently Julio Jones won't be. So this coming from Ian Rappaport, and he's reportedly been working out in Alabama, staying in shape and all of that jazz. Last month, the Falcons said they were in, quote, a great spot with Jones, but obviously that is not the case as we stand right now. So with that, Jones is going to make $10.5 billion in 2018 as part of the contract extension he signed with the team back in 2015. So that 5-year deal pays Jones an average of $14.25 million per year. That ranks 8th among wideouts in the NFL. So he is essentially on a yearly salary basis being paid as the 8th best wide receiver in the NFL. Let me ask you guys this. Is Julio Jones the 8th best wide receiver in the National Football League? The answer is no. He's a top 3 wide receiver at worst. So I think this comes down to the contract. It comes down to tweaking things a little bit, getting paid a little more, which I totally understand. Rappaport also noted the Falcons are willing to really work with Julio and be expendable in terms of his contract and willing to change things around to his liking. But if Julio continues to miss out on these OTAs and maybe the mandatory minicamp as well, perhaps some of training camp, more opportunity there for Taylor Gabriel, Calvin Ridley to make some noise there. So good stuff there from the side of things of Calvin Ridley trying to kind of get some more reps and starting rotations and whatnot. Not so good news, though, for Julio Jones as he kind of just sits back and waits. We'll see in terms of making any sort of progress here, but Julio Jones wants to get paid a little bit more, and I totally understand that. All right, we got a follow-up here on Reuben Foster because there's a new court date for him. It is June 20th, and this is in regards to a different incident. So this is the weed incident, if you will, when he was arrested on a second-degree misdemeanor charge back in January 12th to be exact, and he was released on $2,500 bond there. So subject to discipline from Roger Goodell in the NFL under its substance abuse policy, by the way. So Roger Goodell could lay down a suspension on Reuben Foster for that, but also for the domestic violence allegations that have since been recanted, but still, who knows with Roger Goodell if he just goes ahead and implements that baseline 6-game suspension there for Reuben Foster. It remains to be seen. So on Wednesday, Foster will hear the judge's decision in terms of that domestic violence case, even though that case is likely to be dropped. And I think it will be. There's no reason to continue on with the charges if the victim has said that she lied throughout all of it. Roger Goodell, in the iron fist that he has, judge, jury, executioner, could come raining down here. So to assume that Foster will play a full season in 2018, I think is a little crazy because, one, you got to focus on this incident here where he could get a couple of games and the domestic violence allegations that have since been recanted, but still, Roger Goodell is Roger Goodell. So with that, does Roger have too much power? Give me a heart for yes, a like for no. I'm thinking a lot of hearts are going to come through the reaction poll here on Facebook and in the comments section here on YouTube. That's just a hunch, though, because, of course, eventually they'll have to change around the collective bargaining agreement in a couple of years here. So I am kind of falling in line with believing that Roger Goodell is probably going to have less power after a new collective bargaining agreement is shelled out there. But yeah, that's the whole situation with Reuben Foster. A little bit of good news last week for 49ers fans out there, but a new court situation to deal with here with the marijuana charges there. All right, let's continue along with the latest NFL headlines. As I talk about Kraft being deposed in the cap case, do want to correct myself in regards to the Falcons earlier. meant to say Mohamed Sanu and Calvin Ridley, not Taylor Gabriel. He is, of course, now on the Chicago Bears. So just fact-checking myself there in case anybody comes at me in comments. But Robert Kraft, he has been deposed in the Colin Kaepernick collusion case against the National Football League. So Kraft joins the likes of Bob McNair and Jerry Jones and John Harbaugh. We'll show you a list later in this little portion here. So ESPN's Adam Schefter reported this back in November, that Kraft was one of several high-profile executives who would be asked to, quote, turn over all cell phone records and emails as part of this Colin Kaepernick collusion case. There's a list of high-profile names who have been questioned so far. Robert Kraft, Bob McNair, John Elway, the GM of the Denver Broncos, Roger Goodell, and John Harbaugh, the head coach of the Baltimore Ravens. I could throw in John Schneider, the GM of the Seahawks, Pete Carroll, another name who has gotten deposed as well. So the list continues to grow here for Colin Kaepernick as he alleges that the NFL and its 32 owners all colluded against him to keep him out of the league. And as this collusion case continues to roll on, Cap is essentially trying to bolster his case by collecting phone records and emails and all this stuff to indicate that the NFL owners worked against him to keep him out of the NFL. Eric Reid has the same thing going on as well as Kaepernick tries to complete this NFL comeback here. We haven't seen him since 2016, and I don't think this grievance case is the best idea to get back into the league. I can see why he's doing this, and I have said this before on my program, that Colin Kaepernick is trying to put pressure on the owners so that eventually they just say, you know what, I don't want to go through these legal fees. Let's just sign this guy and get it over with, and he will drop the collusion case. But I want to ask you guys, do you think the NFL is colluding against Colin Kaepernick? Now, I am asking that all 32 owners are colluding against him. That is what he is alleging, so that is what I am asking you. And for all 32 NFL owners to collude against him basically means that they all came together, whether it was a group chat, a press conference, heck, they were in a conference together, conference room of some sort, and talked about how, hey, let's keep Colin Kaepernick out of the NFL. I don't think they actually did that, and I don't think Colin Kaepernick believes they actually did that. I think that Colin Kaepernick is trying to essentially empty all these owners' wallets through all these legal fees and to put pressure on them to finally sign him. And with good reason. I, on this program, have said that Colin Kaepernick should be in the NFL. He is way overqualified to be at least a backup. And heck, he could be a starter again. We shall see. Now, maybe he doesn't play in the NFL anytime soon, but how about the Alliance of American Football, the new professional league that will get going in 2019? So founder Charlie Ebersol recently said his league wants the best players available regardless of political stances. So obviously this is a smart policy, as any pro football league not named the NFL probably wants to cast a wide net. And Colin Kaepernick has a lot of supporters out there. And when you bring this guy into a league, you're going to bring in fans, you're going to bring in viewers, and thus you are going to bring in ad revenue. So the AAF has done a good job so far in logistically planning out its league. It's going to be on CBS and CBS Sports Network. They have rules shelled out. They already have some coaches, Mike Singletary, Rick Neuheisel, Brad Childress, all these guys. The XFL is far behind compared to the AAF here in regards to planning and whatnot. It's going to start with 8 teams playing a 10-game regular season, franchises in Orlando, Atlanta, Memphis, Salt Lake City, Arizona. 3 more teams will be announced pretty darn soon. But Colin Kaepernick, if he really wants to play organized football, he can play in the AAF because Charlie Ebersol has said, we want the best players, regardless of political stances. All right, so there will be no collusion or anything in that regard in terms of the AAF. Do you have any interest in watching this professional league? Give me a heart for sure. Yeah, I'll be watching some of these games. Give me a like for not so much. I'll track what you guys say here in the comment section on Facebook Live as well as YouTube. I do try to go back and see what you guys talk about and respond to any questions, comments, concerns as I see fit. But there you go. Colin Kaepernick, if he really wants to get some professional football reps in, then you can go play in the AAF. That is an option. All right, we had a trade that went down a couple of days ago. The Browns have traded Jamar Taylor, former second-round pick back in 2013, to the Arizona Cardinals. The Cardinals needed some big-time secondary help alongside Patrick Peterson there. So Jamar spent the last 2 seasons in Cleveland. During that stretch, Taylor tallied 3 interceptions, 23 pass breakups across 31 appearances, including 29 starts for the Cleveland Browns there. In 2017, Taylor led all Browns cornerbacks by playing 90.36% of the team's total defensive snaps. The Cardinals have been looking for an adequate cornerback opposite of Patrick Peterson, and they also saw, the Cardinals did, Tyrann Mathieu leave, Justin Bethel leave, Tramon Williams leave as well via free agency. Jamar Taylor has agreed to drop his base salary from $4.25 million to $975,000. So certainly helps the salary cap situation as well for the Arizona Cardinals there. So big-time secondary help as well as salary cap relief for the Arizona Cardinals. That's a win-win to me. So Jamar Taylor is headed to the big toaster there. All right, let's talk about what the Buccaneers offensive coordinator recently said about Jameis Winston. Don't try so hard. And he's not talking about on the football field. No, he's talking about the pregame ceremonies. So offensive coordinator Todd Monken said Winston should probably dial back his pregame antics. Went on to say Winston shouldn't do as much rah-rah stuff as that, you know, eat the W phrase prior to a game last year comes to mind. So what he's trying to say is, Jameis, don't be yourself. But you know what the funny thing is? In that quote, he also said, be yourself. So does the offensive coordinator know Jameis Winston more than Jameis Winston knows Jameis Winston? Like, why are you saying this stuff? Jameis Winston is a very fiery guy, and he wears his emotions on his sleeve. He is certainly no Jay Cutler in regards to keeping things internally. He's not a Joe Flacco or anybody like that. He likes to, you know, be amped up on the football field, especially in pregame ceremonies, if you will. So is this really what the offensive coordinator of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers is going to criticize right now? When you have a team that had a non-existent run game last year, Mike Evans had a big-time drop-off campaign in 2017, there was a big-time lack of pass protection, Jameis Winston was on his butt many times, and you have Dirk Cutter as the head coach who is not very good and should be fired this year. So we're going to pick apart Jameis Winston being all amped up before a game and saying you should be yourself instead. Well, what if that is his personality? Like, I just don't understand. So I had to put this into the headlines because I'm just sitting here to myself thinking, huh? What? Okay, like, why can't you just let him be amped up and, you know, try to let the players feed off of that energy? It's one of the weirder headlines that I read through over the weekend. But let me say this. The offensive coordinator of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers should probably focus more on devising effective plays for the team rather than criticizing what Jameis Winston does on the sidelines. So there you go. We'll see what happens. Hit me up. Let me know what you think about Jameis Winston. You think he'll win a Super Bowl? I think he has the potentiality to do it. He needs some more help, especially on the defense for Tampa Bay, but they did address that a little bit, especially on that front line. So we'll see what happens. Stay tuned. All right, and then finally here, what's the latest on Dez Bryant? Sounds like he's waiting on a call from the New York Giants. That is my understanding, according to some rumors out there. So there is growing belief that Dez really, really, really wants to play for the New York Giants. And obviously this makes some sense because Dez has said before he wants to play the Dallas Cowboys twice a year. And to do that, you kind of have to be in the NFC East. The Washington Redskins have shown zero interest in Dez Bryant, although that is the team with the most salary cap space outside of Dallas. Then you have the likes of the Eagles. They have no salary cap space, and they have no need for Dez Bryant. So that leaves the Giants here. And by the way, the Cowboys are not re-signing Dez. That's not happening. So the Giants, a team that lost Brandon Marshall, recently cut him after he failed the physical, and Maybe they look into Dez Bryant, but this is what I can tell you. There has been zero interest from the Giants organization for Dez Bryant. So it has been a one-sided affair so far. If you go back into a recent interview he had with 24/7 Sports talking about all the teams out there, gave a lot of high praise for the Giants, especially Eli Manning, Odell Beckham Jr., Saquon Barkley, the offense that is there, Pat Shurmur, the new head coach as well. So Dez wants to be in New York, and he wants to play with the Big Blue there, and we'll see what happens. They could use some ability after OBJ and Sterling Shepard there. Roger Lewis, Cody Latimer really don't inspire too much as a wide receiver number 3. I don't have the Giants in my top 5 new landing spots for Dez Bryant. I did switch things up, though. I took out the Green Bay Packers because I just don't think it makes sense anymore. I left them on there for a little bit because I gave some credence to what Jason Witten said recently, but I took them out. I put in the New York Jets. They have a lot of salary cap space. They have a need at wide receiver. They got Robbie Anderson. I get that. They got Quincy Enunwa as well. But they could certainly use a guy like Dez Bryant, especially if you want Sam Darnold to have a nice, friendly red zone target. Eventually, Sam Darnold will be the quarterback for the Jets. I think it's only a matter of time there. I do have the Patriots at number 1. I will continue to keep them there because I think it makes a lot of sense from need, from personality standpoint, and for motivation for Dez. Obviously, probably the best route to get a Super Bowl victory on this list. Seattle, big-time need. Colts, obviously a need after T.Y. Hilton. A lot of salary cap space. The Houston Texans, probably on the outskirts in terms of potentiality to land Dez, but certainly something to keep in mind there. I talked about them on Friday morning with the salary cap space and perhaps utilizing Dez as some depth there at wide receiver. When do you guys actually think Dez is going to get signed? Not where, but when. Because we have heard before, right, reports prior to the draft that Dez's market was going to skyrocket after the draft. And that is obviously just not the case at this juncture. There has been quiet waters across the board in terms of the Dez Bryant market. All we know in terms of offers was that the Baltimore Ravens offered him a multi-year deal. And Dez, I am still hurt because of that. Please. Oh, you're killing me. Joe Flacco needs help. Anyway, that's all we've really heard. So it's been a quiet market. I don't know how long it's going to continue to be quiet. Do we have to wait for injuries at wide receiver for Dez to actually get some very real interest and for steam to really pick up here? I don't know. Hit me up in comments here on Facebook Live and YouTube, and I will go back, read them, and respond. All right, folks, you're watching the Cam Rogers Show, presented by Autolist. Head on to Autolist.com. Get that car shopping done in a very fast fashion. I'm telling you, it saves you so much time. Do not go to the car dealership. I have done that before. It is not fun. Now I use Autolist, and we thank them for sponsoring the Cam Rogers Show here today. All right, folks, so I did my top 10 NFL offenses entering 2018 back on Friday morning. So now I'm going to do my top 10 defenses. I will count you down from the best, or actually from the worst of the 10 to the best. So we'll start off with number 10 here with our beautiful flashy number. And we've got the New England Patriots. And this may be a bit of a surprise. From an ability standpoint, I guess you could argue the Patriots are not a top 10 defense. But look at their scoring defense from 2017. They were 5th. Just ignore the pass defense, ignore the run defense. Because at the end of the day, it's how many points do you actually give up? That is the most important stat in my eyes. Scoring offense and scoring defense. And for the Patriots, they were top 10, heck, top 5 in scoring defense a year ago. They won't wow you in pass defense or rush defense categories, although I think the pass defense will be pretty darn good with McCourty there at corner now, Jason McCourty. And you got Stephon Gilmore on the other side, too, who I think is a very fine player. So I also like the addition of Adrian Claiborne. He brings some pass rushing ability. The Pats have been lacking for some time. And obviously, McCourty filling that void of Malcolm Butler, who, by the way, I think is an upgrade over Butler, McCourty is. So that's just my take on that. Danny Shelton comes to town from the Browns via a trade. Malcolm Brown's a good player on the interior as well. Oh, by the way, Dante Hightower is coming back as well, so that'll help things at the linebacking core. It'll be interesting to see how Duke Dawson finds a role in that secondary, drafted in the second round there, and he can learn a couple good tidbits there from Stephon Gilmore and McCourty there. Two fine players in their own right. I think Duke Dawson could learn a thing or two from them, so that's good stuff there. Be interesting to see how he pans out. The other question is, how does this Patriots defense regroup with Matt Patricia, their former defensive coordinator, no longer there? He's now the head coach of the Detroit Lions, as many of you probably know because of the recent allegations that have come out. So there is no DC for the Patriots right now. They chose not to name one. Brian Flores is assumed the defensive coordinator. How does that affect things on the defensive side going into 2018? I don't think too much. I think they got some fine players there. I think the Patriots will be a top 10 scoring defense yet again. Let's go to number 9 on my list. Watch out. I'm telling you, this team in general is going to be a force, but this defense is going to be fun to watch too. The Tennessee Titans added Malcolm Butler to that secondary that certainly needs help. Adoree Jackson had a nice rookie campaign, but he can't do it on his own. So now a couple of good corners there for Tennessee. Logan Ryan is there as well, another former Patriot, might I add. But that front seven is what really sticks out for me. It's full of run stuffers and sackers. You got Jarrell Casey, Derek Morgan, Brian Rakpo, perhaps the future captain of that defense with Rashaan Evans, the linebacker there out of Alabama. And let's not forget Harold Landry add incredible value in that second round there. So head coach Mike Vrabel, a former linebacker in his own right, has no excuse to not have a successful defensive season here because the pieces are all there. And oh, by the way, they signed Benny Logan, defensive tackle, who walked into free agency and had a really slow market for like no reason at all. He's a good player, and now he's going to be a good depth guy for Tennessee. The Titans will be in playoff contention because they will control both sides of the line of scrimmage. I'm talking about the offensive line, I'm talking about the defensive line. So I like them as perhaps a sleeper team in 2018. Maybe not a full-fledged sleeper like maybe a Chicago Bears would be, but the Tennessee Titans are going to be a team to watch out for in the AFC South and in the NFL in general. Let me know what your sleeper team is entering the 2018 season. Give me a dark horse. Which team will come out of nowhere and make the playoffs? I think the Tennessee Titans will be a force, and I can't wait, and I can't believe I'm saying this, for Tennessee Titans versus Jacksonville Jaguars games in 2018. Can you believe that? I actually just said that, but those are two good teams. All right, let's go to number 8 on my list. Got the New Orleans Saints here as a top 10 defense. Coming off a really solid year, perhaps you could say the unit overachieved a little bit, but 10th in scoring defense, that's pretty darn good for a team that has been in the dumpster in terms of rankings on the defensive side for many years. So why are they here? Marshawn Lattimore won the Defensive Rookie of the Year for a reason. He is going to be a shutdown corner for that franchise. Then you got slot corner Patrick Robinson coming to town from Philadelphia. Had a really good season, an elite season at cornerback if you're going by Pro Football Focus standards. Ken Crawley is there as well at corner. He had a good season. They re-signed Alex Okafor. That's very important. They made a move up for Marcus Davenport. That certainly has to pan out for the way in which they went up and grabbed him. A lot of people thought, well, that was a big-time reach. And then Cam Jordan is as good as they come at defensive end. Maybe it's because his name is Cam. I don't know. Just my theory. But you got the Saints that can rush the passer. You got good corners on the outside. They can beef up that run defense a little bit, and they were middle of the pack last year, not the worst in the world. They're going to be a team that can play good defense. And that is big for the Saints because then they can run the football more and rest Drew Brees and his arm a little bit more, throw the football more like 20, 25 times rather than 50. Saints are at number 8 here. Let's go to number 7 on my list. The Denver Broncos check in. All right, so for Denver here, and I'm pretty sure I saw my guy Melvin in the comments section. Yes, I did, and he's a Broncos fan. Hopefully he likes this. The Broncos went through a situation last year where the quarterback play was just putrid. And it was Paxton Lynch, and it was Brock Osweiler, and all of this, and it just did not work out. Trevor Siemian as well. And because the quarterback play was so bad, the defense was on the field for so long. And I don't care how talented you are, if you are playing a football game on the defensive side more than you should, you're going to get gassed, and you're going to give up points. And you're also going to have short fields because people like Trevor Siemian throw interceptions. And that's why you see the weird kind of discrepancy there of scoring rank to pass defense and run defense. You just saw it on your screen. They were top 10 in pass defense and run defense, but they were in the bottom of scoring defense ranks. So it was like, what happened? Here's what happened. The quarterback play sucked last year, quite frankly, and the defense was in short field situations here. So I like the Denver Broncos just fine. Von Miller, Bradley Chubb is there as well, by the way. They'll get after the quarterback very nicely. Domata Peko actually had a really nice little resurgence in 2017 too. So Denver's going to be a top 10 defense yet again, and if they just get a little bit better quarterback play from Case Keenum, could be top 5, even better. We'll see. All right, let's go to number 6 in my rankings. We will remain in the AFC West, the Los Angeles Chargers. So here's my reasoning behind the LA Chargers. There are 2 key components to playing effective modern-day defense. 1, pass rush. 2, cornerbacks. The Chargers have both. Melvin Ingram and Joey Bosa are elite edge rushers coming off a fantastic 2017 season. Casey Hayward, Trevor Williams, Desmond King, Jason Verrett equate to maybe a top 3 cornerback group in the NFL. That is the formula you need to beat elite offenses and elite quarterbacks in the NFL these days. The Giants did it with Brady a couple of times, and the Seahawks did it with Manning a couple of years ago. The Chargers can do it again in the Super Bowl if they get there. They have the defense equipped to make that kind of production on the field. And the only issue with the Chargers is the ability to stop the run. The interior of that defensive line struggled. Brandon Mebane was not very good. Corey Liuget was just okay. 31st in run defense a year ago. They're going to have to improve upon that. But edge rushers, corners, heck, safeties too. It's all there. Chargers check in at number 6. Let's go to number 5 on my list, and we're going to talk about perhaps a sleeper playoff team, the Chicago Bears. So they're shaping up to be a pretty darn good defense. Prince Amukamara, Kyle Fuller at corner. Really important that the Bears kept Fuller, by the way. Eddie Jackson, Adrian Amos are fantastic safeties. The front 7 is going to be really interesting to watch. Roquan Smith, I think, is going to be a great linebacker for this team. Loved their selection of him in the NFL draft. Aaron Lynch provides some ability as well. Danny Trevathan, Leonard Floyd, I like them a lot too. Akeem Hicks is coming off a great season on that front line, ranking 14th among defensive linemen according to Pro Football Focus. You got defensive coordinator Vic Fangio there, who's a great coach in his own right, and he should have a field day with these players. There's a lot of talent on that defense. The Bears should be a top 10 D in 2018. Heck, they should be top 5 according to my rankings. But will they make the playoffs? And I want to hear from you in regards to that. Give me a heart for yes. Give me a like for no. The NFC North is kind of interesting. The Packers don't have the best roster in the world, but they do have Aaron Rodgers coming back. The Vikings are very solid across the board. The Lions have a new head coach dealing with some bad PR, shall we say. So maybe there's an opportunity there for Chicago to make some noise in the playoffs. Let's continue along in my top 10 defense rankings. We've got the Los Angeles Rams here at number 4. All I need to do is just list off all of these names. LaMarcus Joyner, Aqib Talib, Aaron Donald, Ndamukong Suh, Marcus Peters. These are household names that you guys know. The Rams could have the number 1 pass defense next season, and I firmly believe their core of secondary players is top 3 in my eyes. I don't see a weakness anywhere in that defensive backfield. So meanwhile, the front line is going to be disruptive. You have the interior of Donald and Ndamukong Suh. You got Michael Brockers coming off the edge there, who really didn't have a bad 2017 either. I do have my concerns about linebacker, but this is a top 5 defense easily, and Wade Phillips is a top 5 defensive coordinator as well. So you pair those 2 up, boom. You're going to have a really good team in 2018. All right, let's go to number 3 on my list, the Philadelphia Eagles, the champs. Speaking of disruptive front lines, the Eagles certainly have one of those. Michael Bennett, Fletcher Cox, Timmy Jernigan. bunch of players that can make some big-time noise. Brandon Graham as well. The Eagles should have no problem creating sacks in 2018. Now, typically, teams with good front lines have somewhat bad linebacking cores, at least mediocre at best. Not the case here with Philadelphia. Michael Kendricks, Jordan Hicks coming back from injury, Nigel Bradham, they're all really solid linebackers. So the front line is good. The linebackers are good too. I do have my concerns about that secondary. Jordan Mills I'm a little wary about. But here's the luxury of the Eagles. They don't have to blitz. Ever. Like, literally don't blitz at all. There's no reason to. You have an amazing front four. Let them tee off. And then that, in turn, makes the secondary look better. You can have average cornerbacks and safeties in the back end if you can get after the quarterback, because what's the quarterback going to do when he's under pressure? I don't care if there's somebody streaking wide open down the field. Doesn't matter. The quarterback can't get there. So that's the logic with the Eagles. I think they're going to be a very fine defense in 2018. Will they repeat as Super Bowl champions? That's the question I want to be heard or answered from you. Hit me up on Facebook Live as well as YouTube. I'll tell you what, it's difficult to repeat. It's very difficult to fend off the, shall we say, complacency after winning a Super Bowl. I saw it with my Baltimore Ravens once before, especially Joe Flacco after he got that big-time contract. So I have suffered through it, Eagles fans. All right, let's go to number 2 on the list, the Jacksonville Jaguars. Well, they were Sacksonville for a reason last year. Calais Campbell played out of his mind. That guy had a fantastic season. Malik Jackson is in the prime of his career. Yannick Ngakoue from Maryland made a major jump in his sophomore campaign. The secondary is rich with Jalen Ramsey and A.J. Boye, Barry Church, Tashawn Gibson. These are good players. Meanwhile, you got Telvin Smith, who had an out-of-nowhere elite campaign at linebacker, ranked 5th among qualifying LBs according to Pro Football Focus. The only weakness for the Jaguars is stopping the run, and first-round selection Taven Bryan should aid in that process of improving things on that front line there in terms of stopping the run. So we'll see what happens, but defense will be the reason why this team contends in the AFC South as well as for a Super Bowl. So I'll tell you what, Jacksonville Jaguars are trending upward, especially on that defensive side. The big question here, can Blake Bortles get it done? Can he make that throw in crunch time? And I could devote a whole hour to the study of Blake Bortles playing quarterback. But I won't do that to spare all of you. I'm getting to number 1 on my list now. The Minnesota Vikings, they are the number 1 defense heading into this 2018 NFL season. Secondary to defensive line, the best in the National Football League. Trey Waynes, Harrison Smith, even Andrew Sendejo had a great season in the back end. So Anthony Barr, yeah, he had an up-and-down career collectively, but he's solid to go along with Eric Kendricks there at linebacker. And then the Vikings have Sheldon Richardson on that front line with Linval Joseph and Everson Griffin. So it's like, you tell me what the weakness is here with the Minnesota Vikings. I mean, look at the stats on your screen. Number 1 in scoring last year. 2nd in pass defense last year. 2nd in run defense last year. So, like, if anybody has a problem with me putting the Vikings at number 1, I seriously want a 5-paragraph essay with a topic sentence and a thesis signed by you to explain why the Vikings do not deserve the number 1 ranking. Because I'll tell you what, I am firmly in belief that the Vikings should be at number 1. I am not going to budge anywhere from that. Maybe you can make the argument that the Patriots don't belong there. Maybe you could make the argument that the Cowboys should be inside the top 10. Whatever. You cannot make the argument that the Vikings belong any lower than number 1 in my rankings. That I can promise you. So real quick, let's summarize my top 10 defenses entering 2018. Minnesota at 1, Jacksonville at 2, you got Philly at 3, the Rams are there at number 4, Chicago Bears are at 5. Then 6 through 10, the Chargers, watch out for them, Denver Broncos, New Orleans Saints, Tennessee Titans are at number 9, a team that I think will really emerge, and then the New England Patriots there at number 10. The top 10 defenses for the 2018 NFL season. Should be a fun one at that. And we got a fun guy next to me, Harris Rubenstein, on the program right now. And man, how we doing, sir?
We're the Blues Brothers today.
We are the Blues Brothers.
To rep the old company where the Chat Sports Polo.
Yeah, we texted each other before the show. We planned this out, so Absolutely. There you go. You're our NBA analyst here,
indeed,
Harris,
indeed.
and you've got a lot to break down in regards to LeBron James as he continues his series against the Boston Celtics. Big-time performance in Game 3. How important was that, Harris?
It was huge not only for the Cleveland Cavaliers, but I think for LeBron's future, just in general for Cleveland. I think he saw that this team still does have potential to beat and really, frankly, crush high-quality opponents. I mean, I think through the first 2 games of the series, and remember, this is the Boston Celtics who have been one of the best home team, or frankly have been the best home team for the entire playoffs so far. They haven't lost a single home game. So now if you're LeBron in Cleveland, they're coming into your house Game 3, couple days of rest. You know, obviously the Celtics were coming in playing, you know, an exciting high-energy series with the 76ers. The Cavs swept the Raptors. So the rest differences were, I think, a huge deal and weren't talked about enough. So now even rest going into Game 3, and the Cavs just blew them out. I mean, that was also a game for the Celtics where you desperately needed Kyrie Irving or Gordon Hayward to take over. I mean, it was pretty obvious.
So that was the game when finally Boston missed Kyrie.
Exactly. That was the game where you saw, okay, that's why you trade for Kyrie Irving. That's why you signed Gordon Hayward to a max contract. Because when you walk into Cleveland and you have to take down the king up 2-0 in Cleveland, like, that's the game where you need stars. And LeBron just kind of showed them and the rest of those young kids, look, you are not ready for this in Cleveland. The Celtics might win this series by winning 4 games at home, but I'd be very surprised if they were able to pull one out in Cleveland. We'll see what happens tonight. But from a LeBron standpoint, I mean, he shot the ball 12 times and had 12 assists. I mean, he's still 27 points. It's amazing. Like, that was the game that I think he wanted to have, where it was his teammates that really won the game, not just him, and he showed up in a big way.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about post-playoffs here. Yeah. LeBron has his 3 needs for his next team. And Harris, family comfort, championships, post-career endeavors, it all makes sense to me.
It does, and that's what it comes down to. This is coming from multiple different sources. The Ringer's Kevin O'Connor broke this on one of his podcasts, and this has kind of been spread out through the NBA interwebs. But this is what it's going to come down to for LeBron. How comfortable is his family going to be in that city? Can he realistically win championships here? And his post-career endeavors as well. We've known for a long time that LeBron James wants to get more involved in film and entertainment. Obviously, he was in the movie Trainwreck, which, by the way, he was fantastic and he was quite funny. It was great to see, you know, him really put the personality on stage. But I think for LeBron, obviously winning championships means a lot. But he's also 33, and we know that the business side of his career is almost just as important as the basketball to him at this point. I think a lot of factors come into play, but there's also a possibility that we're going into a very interesting part of LeBron's career where he doesn't sign a long-term contract anywhere, and he's simply not I don't want to call it ring hunting, but that's basically what he'd be doing. There's been talks that he might kind of turn into a sort of NBA mercenary where he just kind of jumps around to the team that he thinks could have the best chance of beating the Warriors that year. So maybe next year it's the Rockets. Maybe the year after that it's the Lakers if they get Kawhi in 2019 and he goes somewhere else on a 1-year deal. So there are a lot of different places that he could go for next season, but I would be surprised if we see him sign a contract that's more than 2 years. I think LeBron is going to try to keep his options open throughout the rest of his career and really try to go to a couple different teams.
The Lakers make a lot of sense here, Harris, but that kind of goes against this next rumor here.
It just never really makes sense for next year. It makes sense for like 2 years or 3 years, but for next year, I just can't see it yet.
So here's the deal. The Lakers may want Kawhi over LeBron. That's the buzz?
It is the buzz, and it comes down to what is going to happen with Kawhi and the Spurs this summer. I mean, again, Kawhi could sign a supermax with the Spurs, get $200+ million, and this could all be a load of baloney. But at the same time, the Lakers know if that Kawhi goes to free agency in 2019, that they have the best chance of getting him. He's a Los Angeles native. He grew up a Lakers fan. And there have been rumors that he wants to head back home and play in Southern California. But if you're the Lakers, you can argue that Kawhi is a better decision. I mean, he's younger. He obviously has more years left in his NBA career. He fits more to the long-term plan of the Lakers, along with Lonzo Ball and Kyle Kuzma and the rest of the young pieces that they have. It kind of keeps their timeline set where they aren't trying to win next season, and it can kind of, stretch out through the rest of Kawhi's career. But with LeBron, again, the Lakers take a huge risk by signing him next year. Because what happens if they sign him, they just aren't a championship contender next year? Well, if he only signs a 1 to 2 year deal with the player option in year 2, he's gone. He's not going to come back, and all of a sudden, I don't want to say you've wasted a year, but you've certainly hurt Brandon Ingram's progression for that year, and you've hurt a lot of your other young pieces as well. So if you're the Lakers and you have the possibility of going Paul George in year 1, he just wants to be there long term. It doesn't matter if they win a championship next year. You can get Paul George year 1. You save your money. Maybe you give it out to a Tyreek Evans or a couple other veteran players that you can flip to the deadline for some future assets. And then 2019, you still have that max slot to give to Kawhi. Maybe it is a better idea than signing LeBron and Paul George in one offseason. I still don't think with LeBron and Paul George that you're better than the Golden State Warriors.
I don't think so either.
This Rockets team is the best team that the Warriors have faced in the West in a half a decade, and they're just not good enough to beat the Warriors. Is a team with LeBron, Paul George, Lonzo Ball, Kyle Kuzma, and a sixth man and Brandon Ingram good enough to beat the Warriors? I don't think so, and I think that the Lakers know that too. But as a team in 2 years with a third-year Lonzo Ball, a third-year Kyle Kuzma, a year Paul George under your belt, and then you add Kawhi Leonard, a fully healthy Kawhi Leonard, mind you, I think at that point you have a much, much better chance of actually taking down the Warriors. But with LeBron and Paul George next year, I just don't know if the young players are ready yet.
All right, so hit us up in the reaction poll. Maybe it's not as simple and easy as it appears. We'll keep you on here, Harris. I do want to have you chat about this final word on the Cam Rogers Show. But first, we are presented by Autolist. Head on to Autolist.com. Get that car shopping done in a flash. Beautiful website, easy to navigate. Don't go to the car dealership. Autolist.com. All right, Harris, final word here, and it's an ode to the Vegas Golden Knights, the second expansion team since 1960 to reach a title series in its first season, and they defeated the Winnipeg Jets 2-1 yesterday, Harris, to punch its ticket to the Stanley Cup Finals. And we have to go way back to the 1967-68 St. Louis Blues, although that was a time when the league had just 12 teams and 8 made the playoffs then, where an expansion team in its first year made the title series. How good is this for the NHL?
It's so good for the NHL because they took a chance on a non-conventional market to see if hockey could work there, and it's literally worked out as good as it possibly can so far. The coolest thing for me about this, you look at this roster, it's made from a bunch of NHL cast-offs. I mean, Alex Tuch, Marc-Andre Fleury was the Penguins' Stanley Cup goalie for a while there, but, people thought that he was a little bit over the hill. They just got a bunch of good NHL players that other teams just didn't want. And mind you, Cam, they have 8 picks in the top 2 rounds over the next 2 years. This team is only going to get better. Right. It's incredible. So I love this. I think this is great. It's so good for the league. I mean, it was so funny when the Knights made the Stanley Cup yesterday. Apparently over like every loudspeaker in every club in Vegas, they announced that they won it. Everyone was cheering.
Really?
Everyone
was
awesome. Freaking out.
They're called the Golden Misfits. Just channel that underdog role. Harris, if you go back into August and you look at the statements from their executives and all this, zero expectations. No, they just wanted to compete.
They wanted to have a fun team. And honestly, even before they got incredibly good, this team's always been a lot of fun. They score goals. They play decent defense. But this just turned into something I don't think anyone thought. It's a shame. The one thing I will say it's a minor shame because this kind of shows you like how big, in quotes, the NHL is. This should be probably one of the top 3 biggest stories in sports, an expansion team reaching the championship of their respective league. But unfortunately, it is still hockey, and it is obviously during the NBA playoffs.
Hey, but I am talking about it here on the Cam Rogers Show. Marc-Andre Fleury, by the way, 32 stops in that win against the Jets. Harris, Fleury got benched when he was playing for the Penguins last year. So, like, big-time turnaround.
I'm a Bruins fan, and Marc-Andre Fleury has haunted my dreams throughout my entire NHL fandom, and then he just kind of fell off a cliff. I mean, he played so much hockey.
Yeah.
They made it to the playoffs so many times. He just kind of fell apart physically, but, you know, he kind of had a year off, and then obviously moves to Vegas, and they're just like, you're a guy. Just go out there and do what you can do, and it's just been incredible to see.
Hey, and you're an incredible guy, Harris.
Oh,
thanks for coming on, my man.
That.
Appreciate that. You guys have been watching the Cam Rogers Show. I will be back here Wednesday morning, 10 o'clock Eastern Time. Until then, take care, folks.